Hello, everyone, and welcome into our program today. My name is Mike Royer here at WVUA 23. We have a special program today and a special guest. This is Dave Pass. Dave Pass is with Sealy Real Estate here in Tuscaloosa, but if he had hats, he'd have two or three other hats with him. Dave, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Mike, for having me. Pleasure to be here.
We're going to talk about air transportation for the Tuscaloosa area mostly today. Tell me about Sealy Real Estate, what you do. It's mostly a rental company, but you have other arms that do different things. Just tell me about your company.
We are. I mean, primarily we're in the apartment business. We're in 8 cities and 4 states. Mainly tertiary markets like Tuscaloosa, we have about 9,500 apartments in our portfolio. And if you're in one of our cities, we'd love to work with you.
And a pretty good percentage of those are to college students here and other towns, or is it kind of mixed up?
Actually, we focus more on the workforce housing, kind of regular people apartments. I mean, we certainly have a few properties that are student oriented, but it's not the majority of our portfolio. Whether you're a student, just a regular person working, a family, we try to do a good job of taking care of all of our residents.
Like all businesses, did COVID spin all kinds of problems your way that you'd never had to deal with before, or did you just kind of have to figure day to day how to plow through this?
I think like a lot of places, COVID certainly presented unprecedented challenge, for our country, for every business, that we have, just like everybody else. But we have a very talented team, very committed and dedicated staff, and and our residents, really, we did our part to meet people, to help them meet their obligations, and they met their obligations. Sure. And I can't say that COVID is something that I'd like to live through again, but because we have a really strong team, because we have really good residents. We did okay.
You told me you came to Tuscaloosa in 2012.
Yes, sir.
Met a Tuscaloosa girl in
Atlanta. We were living in Atlanta.
Okay.
I went to college in Atlanta. Met Jenny. Her grandfather founded our company. Okay. And we were looking, when we started having kids, we were looking to move to one of our hometowns, and this Tuscaloosa just made sense. And good. It's amazing how it's changed. Since we moved here.
You said kids plural. How many do you have?
I have 2. A son, Stephen, he just turned 10 a couple months ago, and my daughter Charlotte turned 8 in November.
Good for you. I'm glad they're all healthy and happy. And again,
They're
thanks
wonderful.
for joining us today. The hat I talked about earlier of you wearing, you serve on the board of the Chamber of Commerce of West Alabama, and you also serve as the chairman of the airport committee, but that's for the city of Tuscaloosa, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Has it been obvious to you for some time that as nice as our airport is, as good as it is for the university, for people who come in for events, especially football, it's a great airport, that at some point to really grow, we've got to push hard to get some commercial air service into our airport again?
Yeah, I really think, in our airport committee, I get to be the face of this a lot of times, but, I want to really mention Jeff Powell, our airport manager, who does a first-rate job of managing the Tuscaloosa National Airport, as well as my colleagues on the Airport Advisory Committee. It's one of the most fulfilling boards or groups that I'm a part of. And one of the things is I thought we needed a plan, and commercial service is one of 3 objectives in the plan that our committee has recommended to the mayor and the council. One is kind of creating strategies to make the airport more financially sustainable, and kind of create ways to stimulate capital investment, in the airport, so that it is reflective, of where Tuscaloosa is now versus where Tuscaloosa was. The second is establishing commercial service, but because we feel like we have the case for it. We've done the numbers. It's extremely competitive. It's a very hard thing to do. I can't promise that we will be successful, but you're never successful at something that you don't try to achieve. And we feel like we have a pretty strong case for support. And then third, and this is something I think that people don't appreciate about our airport, is really positioning the airport, to stimulate interest in aeronautics as well as economic development. You know, we're a national airport. You know, people saw our name change a couple of years ago. It used to be Tuscaloosa Regional Airport.
Yep.
Well, we're a Tuscaloosa National Airport now. You know, based upon, you know, kind of three criteria. It's, you know, normally like emplanements, which are people getting on a plane, commercial planes and things like that. You know, as well as like, you know, but one of the big things is like how much freight you land. And what a lot of people don't realize is how important, you know, this airport is, you know, to our automotive industry. You know, we replaced the runway, and we can talk about that, you know, recently. But if you look at the number of large aircraft, you know, that land, you know, in Tuscaloosa over the last, you know, 20 years, yeah, you have a lot of football charters and things along those lines, you know, but the large aircraft, the bulk of them are, you know, are supporting our automotive industry.
With,
you know,
with
flying
parts
in parts, you
and
know, getting
people.
it, yeah, absolutely. You know, you know, not necessarily people. It's really a lot more parts, freights. I mean, freight's you know, probably the primary reason we're a national airport. You know, and so that runway was extremely important to, you know, everybody looks at the runway as, well, we've got to have it for commercial service. Well, yes, you probably do to fly big planes in here all the time, but you know, we had to repay, you know, I mean, at our properties, we have to repave our parking lots, you know, every 20 or 30 years. And I think the last time the runway was done was like in 1995. And, you know, we were getting to the point where at some point it would create safety issues. At some point it would create, you know, an interruption in the automotive supply chain. And, you know, it just needed to be done to sustain the current business, not to mention, you know, paving the way, no pun intended, for what we'd like to see.
And airport runways and parking lots don't just wear out because of use. They wear out because of time and weather and degradation of the products that go into asphalt or concrete.
Well, it's also, too, they do wear out, but also you have to consider design changes in aircraft. You know, there's the, you know, when a plane lands, you know, there's the amount of like pounds per square foot in pressure. You know, and so newer planes have fewer wheels, you know, or smaller wheels or whatnot. And so it's not so much the top layer of the asphalt, but it's like all the stuff that goes underneath it to make sure that you know, that the runway and the length and stuff can handle the physics of the pressure and everything like that. And you know, and what we did with that runway, you know, again, a testament to the airport committee, or airport staff, Jeff, Tommy, Atkins, the consultants at the city, engaged, you know, to kind of design it. You know, this was a project, you know, I mean, we thought it would cost $11 or $12 million. I mean, it came in ahead of schedule, under budget.
I remember reporting that under budget.
And there was an excellent environmental component. It was kind of budgetary, but we were actually able to take some of the old material from the old runway, grind it up, and use it as some of the underpinnings for the new one. And so, you know, I think the federal government, you know, got a good bang for its buck. You know, and I'm proud of that. And you know, you really do need to look at, you know, also look at St. Bunn and Company. I mean, they won the bid, you know, for that. And I thought it was just excellent. You know, I mean, they were really committed to getting that work done. You know, for we had a very narrow time frame for when that had to happen.
Right, I understand.
And they got it done.
Let's take a break. And you know why you're my favorite kind of guest?
And why?
You know what you're talking about. And we're not talking about life and death, but we're talking about something that's very important to West Alabama, and you have a passion for that. When we come back, I want to focus again on the three main goals at the airport and talk about how we're going to reach out and accomplish those, hopefully down the road. We appreciate you joining us for our special program today. Dave Pass is our guest. I'm Mike Royer. We'll take a break and be right back.
Great.
That was 8 minutes.
Wow. You're a pro.
Oh, I just asked questions out of... Welcome back to our conversation with Dave Pass. Dave is with the Sealy Company here in Tuscaloosa. He also serves on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce of West Alabama, and he is the chairman of the Airport Committee. I didn't know we had an airport committee, but the city does, and that's who you report to. The committee doesn't spend money. You don't tell anyone what to do. You are gathering presenting information to the city about our airport and how to make it better. That's the mission of your committee, I take it.
That's correct. I mean, it's formed statutorily by the city council. We report to the council and to the mayor. I think our city council, many communities actually have airport authorities. We do not. The airport is owned and operated by the city of Tuscaloosa, even though it's really arguably not arguably, it's an asset that's the benefits of which are enjoyed by the entire region.
As you look forward to the future of the airport and making it what our dreams are that it can be someday, should there be an airport authority, or is it just fine to be owned and operated by the city? Or would you like to see more of a structure of running it? And that might be something we need to do down the road.
I think that, I think there are benefits and drawbacks to both.
Yeah.
The city has a significant amount of funds invested into the airport. I think that's one of those things. I think from a standpoint of nimbly being able to make decisions and advance things, it might help to have a more independence. But I don't know. I really, at this stage in the game, and the thing is, if we're successful with our plan and we're much bigger and have a larger enterprise, it might make more sense. But we have creating regional funding for various things and in our community is challenging.
Sure.
And it would be very important if we were going to go that route for it to be done the correct way.
You mentioned earlier the impact that the automotive industry has had on our state and on Alabama. Mercedes-Benz changed this area entirely since it's been here. And you mentioned freight coming into the airport. One of the three things you mentioned that are important about the airport, I didn't think about freight. I didn't know freight was flown in here. And when someone, whether it's companies we've heard of or a smaller company transporting freight, they pay to do that. They don't just come in here and land and take off without us benefiting from that. That's important to us, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, the airport's revenue sources, landing fees, special event fees, fuel flowage, on the gas, there's a decent amount of gas that's sold out there, aviation, jet fuel and such. So yeah, I mean, that's really important. But, when you think about it, and you think about the amount of jobs that we have in this community that are directly generated by Mercedes-Benz and
other companies around it.
All the suppliers in the entire automotive industry, I think it's critical that we have this asset. And the thing is too, there are other, I think should we be successful with the economic development part of that plan, I think the big portion of that is potentially extending our runway, making it longer. That might also open us up to aeronautic, sorts of enterprises, other advanced manufacturing, things like that.
I've been out there covering the Alabama football team returning, and they're in two really big jets. How much bigger or longer does ours need to be to accommodate other kinds of traffic?
Yeah, I think the master plan that we've recently completed and are recommending to the council, I think we'll get to 7,600 feet. I think we're at 6,000 something right now. I think when you're looking at potential, working with like military and defense contracts and things like that, you have larger planes that require, kind of the length. We can take off just about any size plane, a 67 or whatever, right now. When the president joined us for the Alabama LSU game a few years ago, he actually flew in on the vice president's plane.
Slightly smaller.
Still Air Force One, but slightly smaller. Today you might be able to get the bigger plane in, but it would be nice to have, to have the additional runway length, and also too, like when you're recruiting economic development opportunities, there are boxes you have to tick, and if you aren't able to tick the box, then it's to the next competitor.
Well, I'll show you what little I know about this. How many feet would you like to add to the airport if it was your call today and money was no matter? How much longer than it is now?
I think the master plan's got it right.
Which is what?
7,600. I mean, you were talking about going to 8,000 or whatnot, but at some point, because of wetlands and engineering and things like that, the cost benefit, starts to erode. And just speaking with, our economic development folks, they feel like the longer runway would, as presented in the master plan, would be sufficient.
Does the city own the land out there where we need to go longer currently?
I think no.
So that's part of the problem.
We'd have to acquire that. I think some plans or discussions are in the works around that. but no, you would have to acquire some additional land.
Because, with my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's no big deal. Call the paving company, tell them to go out there and extend the runway for us, but it's a lot more complicated, and all kinds of permits, government studies. You mentioned wetlands.
Yeah.
I'm a little familiar with that with farmland. That's a major thing you've got to maneuver.
Yeah, absolutely, and it just runs into can run into a lot of money.
Yep.
I have this joke. It's like you add the word airport to something, it's like going and trying to secure a special events venue and telling them you're getting married.
Yeah.
You put the word wedding and
all of a sudden
things start things start to get more expensive.
A company luncheon's a lot cheaper than a wedding venue.
Right.
You mentioned also when you talked about commercial air, and we'll focus on that the rest of this segment, maybe the rest of the program. You mentioned three things, but on that one you said it's really hard. Is it hard to convince companies to come, or are there other places like the Birmingham Airport, Huntsville Airport, Montgomery that would resist it and be against us getting a carrier?
Well, I think there's a little bit of both. I mean,
okay.
I think philosophically, if you're talking to a carrier, and we have, before I decided to get so passionate about this, I wanted to make sure that we actually had a case for support, and you really need to thank the Chamber, the Tuscaloosa Sports and Tourism Commission, the Economic Development Authority for kind of funding the early studies, to look and kind of see, is this something that would be potentially commercially viable? I mean, so we know how many plane tickets we sold. Now, this is all pre-COVID data. We had really, presented a great case for support. And the other thing is question I had, and a lot of people, had, is, people will say, well, you'll never get service because you're too close to Birmingham, and so, this is where our airport manager really earns his paycheck, because we're like, we need to know if that's true, and so he went out and looked, and there's like 35 other airports in the country that have a similar population, generate the same amount of employments that Tuscaloosa generates, on an annual basis. They have air service, and sometimes they have 2 or 3 carriers.
Yes.
And they're mostly college towns. Like they'll you look at Stillwater, Oklahoma, Purdue, Charlottesville, Virginia. You just go through the list. I mean, we are one of the few towns or cities with a university of the caliber and class that size that we have here that does not have commercial air service. We're
going to focus on that in the last minutes we have in our last segment. College kids who would love to skip Birmingham to make their connection in Atlanta. I know that, and I've not done the homework on it. I just hear too many students going, they need a ride to Birmingham. Getting a ride out to our airport would be a lot easier. We'll talk about that more as we continue. I'm kind of excited about an airport in Tuscaloosa, and we'll continue to talk about that as our special program continues. Stay with us. I'm enjoying my conversation. I hope you are too, with Dave Pass. Dave is the chairman of the Airport Committee for the City of Tuscaloosa. He has several other roles as well. I was thinking earlier when you were talking, if you call X airline and go, we'd like you to have service, I wonder how far down their list of questions would be before they got to, well, what kind of terminal do you have? That's a big piece of this puzzle, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. We have a terminal, but it's old. It was built pre-9/11. Lots changed in kind of an airport design, understandably, since 9/11.
Yep.
And so we will have to deal with that. So we need to deal with the terminal, whether it's a renovation, whether it's a complete rebuild. I don't think it has to be the Taj Mahal. But with the recent passage of the infrastructure law, there are some tremendous opportunities to leverage local funding. I will say that our conversations with the airlines, the ones that we were talking about pre-COVID, got a lot more serious and interested when they learned that we had Elevate Tuscaloosa and that we had a dedicated piece of tax dollars to actually fund a new terminal or some sort of terminal to get some air service started.
Our terminal is a nice-looking terminal, but as you said, it was built decades ago. So much is different now. The technology alone that is needed in an airport, on the surface you would think it's a major remodel if you remodel, but I wonder if it might make sense to smart people to go, we just need to start from scratch because everything has to be different?
Yeah, I think you have to look. I'm a real estate person. I mean, you have to look at it both ways.
Sure.
I mean, the cost matters. I mean, I'm a taxpayer too, and that matters to me as well.
Absolutely.
So that's something that we have to get squared away. But I think the closer we are to shovel-ready projects, the closer we will be to being able to take advantage of this infrastructure law.
I teach a class occasionally here at the university. We have students working with us here at the television station. I overhear them all the time going, can anybody give me a ride to the airport in Birmingham? Or is that shuttle service still working? I can't believe our students wouldn't use a carrier that can get them to their connection in Atlanta over and over again.
People who lived in Tuscaloosa will remember we had commercial service, for a while. And that due to consolidation in the industry, it was suspended. And it was kind of the mid-'90s, but the University of Alabama was sitting at 18,000 students, mainly in-state.
Now we're at 38.
And it was a year, mainly with a majority of first years coming from out of state.
Yep.
It was, we suspended service a year before the first Mercedes rolled off the line. So the game's changed.
Completely.
Tuscaloosa's changed. There's actually only 3 metro areas in the entire state of Alabama that are growing census-wise. We are one of them.
One of them, absolutely.
So, that's a good justification, for the funding and for our case for support. Our challenge is convincing somebody, at an airline, that it is actually worth the risk to start up something new in Tuscaloosa versus adding another plane to an existing route
that you're running over and over again. You mentioned Purdue University, some other college towns.
Yeah.
This seems to be a prime spot for an airline to go, there's a real opportunity for us. And not just college, there's people in Tuscaloosa that travel all the time. Do you have numbers that says how many air travelers would use our airport? Do you have a study on that?
Yeah, we did. Unfortunately, it's pre-COVID, so we'd have to kind of go back and do some things. But we sold. I think it was something like over 300,000 plane tickets were bought point of sale in Tuscaloosa County in 2019.
And they drove to Birmingham to do it.
To sustain service, you'd have to have like 50 or 60,000. So I mean, we don't even have to catch everything that we're. And it wasn't always Birmingham. It was Atlanta, New Orleans, even Golden Triangle over in Mississippi. I mean, shoot, if that community can have commercial service with a university that's smaller than ours, a population that's smaller than ours, without Mercedes, sitting down the, kind of down the way. I mean, surely, we've got a market for our service.
Dave, tell me this. What can viewers do? You said you're a taxpayer, so am I, and so are the folks watching. What can the public do? We've got our committee, and you're doing good work, but public input, what can people do who would love to see air service here?
I think let our city council, our mayor, I don't think they really need to be sold, but looking at also at the other municipalities, our county leadership, our state leadership, our federal delegation, in Washington, just letting them know that it's important to you. We did a survey, unfortunately, right before COVID, where we were answering some questions that some airlines gave us, and we were hoping to get 500 responses, and we got 6,000.
Wow.
So the appetite is there. The other thing I want to mention is, we were able to win a $750,000 grant from the federal government, from the FAA. It's called a SCASD grant to initiate new air service, and we have about 4 years to do that. We have a community match, for that.
That can be used for studies.
Well, it can actually be used to mitigate the risk of starting a new route versus sending that plane. Adding another plane to an existing route, so it can help mitigate the risk. It can also be used, to help market the service. Like when you start something new, I think one of the challenges is changing human behavior. You're used to doing something, and so you have to come up with some strategies to make that. I think a strategy we should look at employing, is looking at free parking for a certain period of time, because everybody hates going to a larger airport or city and paying for parking.
$25 a day to park there. In the 30 seconds we have left, every elected official or that you vote for at some point may play a role in supporting this in Tuscaloosa and in Washington, and people should let people know that.
I think, look, our delegate, all the political officials that I work with are extremely positive about this. I think everyone sees the opportunity. Everybody understands that this is one lever that we could push that could actually help advance, this region on so many different ways.
Dave Pass, I've enjoyed talking to you. We'll have you back and talk some more about this. It's exciting. Thank you.
Mike, thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day.